President Trump had enough meeting the press and walked off to the set. Graham Plattner, the dilemma continues to plague Democrats, and they figured out how to steal California again, it appears. It's Monday, June 8th. This is news and commentary from America's Heartland. Welcome in. This is Heartlander News. Hi there, and welcome in to another edition of Heartlander News. I'm Chris Stigall. Hope you're keeping up to date on all the latest news and headlines every day, all week long. Heartlandernews.com. We talk a lot, and we have been since this show started, about fraud and accountability. Brooke Rollins, the Secretary of Agriculture, talked about it again recently on Fox News.
We sent a letter to every governor in America. No one had ever held the states accountable. The federal government funds the food stamp program. We send hundreds of millions of dollars a day to the states, but there'd never been a back end accountability on how is that money getting spent. So we asked all the states to partner with us. It's time to have accountability. The red states, of course, did. And with that red state data, we found 200,000 dead people getting food stamps. We found 500,000 people that were getting more than one benefit. And y'all, this was in the red states. The blue states wouldn't give us the data. They're suing us. We're in massive litigation right now, looking to cut those funds off until they give us that data. But the fraud is so rampant and so stunning that when the president, the vice president, and our team talks about, when we can root all this fraud out, we're going to really be able to cut the deficit, make sure we're protecting the taxpayer, but also make sure we're protecting the families that rely on these programs at the same time by getting the fraud out.
For most of my life, and I suppose if you're of a certain age, yours too, one of the things that I've been eternally frustrated by, more than just about anything else, is the total lack of accountability in government. I know you say that regularly. It's what I hear almost all the time. More than anything else, voters are frustrated that no one is held accountable. If money disappears from your business, heads roll. If fraud should drain your bank account, investigators show up. I mean, heck, if you have a fraudulent charge pop up on your bank card, what happens? You're alerted immediately. But taxpayer dollars, those just vanish into the federal bureaucracy. We're told not to worry our pretty little heads about it. And year after year, the reports roll in, just like Secretary Rollins said. Waste, fraud, abuse, checks to dead people, benefits for people who don't qualify. And what happens? Maybe a hearing, maybe a press release, maybe a stern report, and then everybody shrugs and moves on. I get the sense that's finally starting to change. Accountability is quickly becoming one of the defining themes of President Trump's second term. We're seeing it in spending. We're seeing it in fraud investigations. Vice President J.D. Vance, Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche, they're leading a series of pushes to root out waste across all federal programs. And they're using AI to do what has never been thought possible before at scale. And that's making sure the money is going to real people, real addresses, for real needs. The numbers, as Secretary Rollins said, are staggering. Estimates of annual waste, fraud, and improper payments run from over $500 billion to nearly $1 trillion a year. Hundreds of billions just walking out the back door while Congress fights for weeks over a few billion here or a few billion there. Every stolen or wasted dollar has to be borrowed, taxed, or printed. And that's a huge reason deficits explode, the debt climbs, interest payments swallow more of the budget. Stop the bleeding, and you suddenly open the door to lower deficits, tax relief, getting inflation under control. But accountability doesn't stop at the money. It's becoming a government principle across the board. If taxpayers deserve to know where their money went, voters deserve to know exactly how their votes are counted too. If government agencies should be audited, election systems should be transparent too, shouldn't they? For instance, what we see going on in Los Angeles right now. Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass and the Democrat Rahman are projected to face off to lead the second largest city in November with 87% of the votes in. This election is days old now, and they still have 13% of the vote to count. And suddenly, out of nowhere, Spencer Pratt, who was leading, is now suddenly trailing. And almost all of the mail-in votes that have come in since Election Day have gone against Spencer Pratt and have helped the Democrats. So what are we talking about here? A total lack of transparency, clearly, in California. Anybody looking at who these votes are, where they're coming from? Are they being audited? Are they being watched in a bipartisan way? I doubt it. Asking tough questions about hundreds of billions in spending, or where thousands and thousands of ballots are coming from, it means we ought to be asking and should be willing to ask tough questions about the processes to decide who governs us and how these processes work. That's not a partisan thing. That's just basic accountability, folks. Yet the media refuses to demand it, especially when it involves Democrats. They've become the PR arm of the Democrat Party. They're not journalists. I mean, look at what Kristen Welker from Meet the Press did with President Trump. In fact, we have it here. This is why President Trump ultimately got so angry and walked off the set. Kristen Welker refused to even hear or entertain or talk with President Trump about the 2020 election and the fraud that's going on. She just outright dismissed it, and President Trump had enough. Aaron, give me number 237 here.
Stupid Biden. He's not smart enough to know what's going on. But people that surrounded him, surrounded his beautiful, resolute desk in the Oval Office, what they did to the lives of people, they destroyed people. They sent people to jail who did nothing wrong.
Just to be very clear, there's no evidence of what you're saying. But let me ask you about Todd Blanche. Listen to me. Listen to me.
Let's talk about Todd Blanche. There's tremendous evidence. There's nothing but evidence. The election was rigged. It was a dirty election. And it's happening again right now in California.
You've never presented evidence.
It's happening right now in California. Right now, it's look at what's happening in California.
To that?
It's
the
4
Republicans
days.
are doing well in
California. No, they're not. They're dropping fast because it's a rigged election. Let me tell you, it's 4 days, and they aren't even close to coming up with it.
You
know why they're doing that? Because they're cheating on the election.
Do you have evidence to support that?
All I have to do is look. All I have to do is look.
That's not evidence.
And I listen to people. And let's see what happens.
But, sir, that's not evidence.
Do you think it's appropriate?
That's how they count the votes in California.
Do you think it's appropriate that they have an election and 5 days later they're nowhere close to picking a winner?
State and local officials acknowledge they are slow. They're urging.
No, they're crooked.
They're urging the votes to be counted quicker. That's how they vote in California.
They're crooked, just like you're crooked. Your press is crooked, and Meet the Press is crooked.
To be fair, I'm not crooked, but let's
really.
Let's
well,
continue.
You play right into their hands.
Let's continue.
You're either crooked or you're stupid. You play right into their hands with this rap. You know that these elections are rigged. Your network knows that they're rigged. You know that I won an election in a landslide, and I got 94% bad press.
But, Mr. President,
you know why I got that? Because you have no credibility.
But you've never presented evidence that it was rigged. Let's keep talking about. I want to talk about Todd Blanche.
You have more evidence. There's more evidence than ever presented.
Let's talk about
your elections in this country. We're like a third world country. Your elections are crooked, and you're crooked, and Meet the Press is crooked, and so is ABC and CBS and CNN.
But, Mr. President,
you're one-sided crooked networks. All right, let's call it quits because I've had enough. Thank you, darling. Have a good time.
Mr. President, let's please. I traveled all the way to Wisconsin.
I've sat in the rain with you.
I know.
I traveled all the way to Wisconsin. On and off in the rain, and I've given you enough time. You ought to straighten out your press because you know what?
Mr. President,
a country can never be great with a dishonest
Listen,
press.
we traveled all the way to Wisconsin for this interview.
We traveled all the way to Wisconsin, bless Kristen Welker's heart. It must have been so uncomfortable for her to leave the Beltway studio and travel to, Wisconsin. By the way, welcome into Heartlander News, Kristen. This is where we call home, and this is where we live, and we like it here. Thank you very much. We traveled all the way to Wisconsin, all the way. What was it, a 2.5-hour flight? Anyway, that's Kristen Welker from Meet the Press, and President Trump clearly fed up. Instead of pressing for real answers, What did she do? She spent the time acting like a defense attorney for California's slow, opaque vote counting. I mean, the red flags are everywhere, obviously, counting dragging on for days and weeks. And she has the temerity to lecture about trust the process. She completely ignored real corruption. The fact that 26 FBI informants were on the scene on January 6th. Serious, unanswered questions that still surround that day. The fact that Pennsylvania did not want that election certified on that day because of the phony way the votes were tallied and counted. Tens of thousands of votes were incorrectly counted for Joe Biden that shouldn't have been in Georgia, we now know, by their own admission. Americans were wronged in 2020. We've seen settlements paid to victims' families, including Ashley Babbitt's family, receiving nearly $5 million. This was an abuse of power like we've rarely seen, and yet somebody like Kristen Welker treats the president like he's some kind of criminal on trial, while giving the media's favorite narrative a complete pass. Not even a little bit of curiosity from Welker there. Meanwhile, President Trump, undeterred, has cleaned up D.C. He's dramatically reduced crime. He's closed the border. He's delivered strong jobs numbers. He's boosted energy production. He's secured great trade deals. He sparked a manufacturing boom, and he has slashed fraud. Success after success after success. And yet, people like Kristen Welker and much of the media treats him like a hostile witness. And why? Because the media has become an accomplice in shielding Democrats from any real scrutiny at all. They scream, "Threat to democracy," while helping bury the very transparency that democracy requires. For decades, Washington's unofficial motto was simple: don't ask too many questions. And then Trump's age of accountability showed up and rejected that entire mindset. Whether it's taxpayer dollars, government agencies, public records, or even the election and the administration of the election, the answer simply cannot be any longer because we said so. The new standard has to be transparency. The new standard has to be follow the money. The new standard has to be audit the books. We have to have a standard that says find the fraud and hold people accountable for it. Look, if government works for the American people deserve to know where their money goes. And by the way, how their votes are counted. We deserve to see those things and know fully. That is not a radical notion, ladies and gentlemen. That is not a partisan notion. That's what responsible government is supposed to be. This has been as evident as it can be when you look at what's going on over at CBS News. I've had a little fun with the fact that Scott Pelley, the haughty, H-A-U-G-H-T-Y, Scott Pelley, who has walked away, I guess fired from CBS News after fighting and screaming and insulting his new bosses, he's now granted an interview. He's mad that the new direction of CBS News doesn't allow for this blanket, blind, partisan hatred of Donald Trump anymore. He's mad about it, and now he's going on a media tour to discuss his new bosses and how angry he is about it. This is critical to understand. It's not just a personality thing we're covering here. I'm actually showing you institutional media like Kristen Welker, like Scott Pelley, and the way they're writhing and hissing as people who understand where the electorate is. Bari Weiss may not be a conservative by any means, who's now running the CBS News division, and this guy that she hired to run 60 Minutes. I'm not suggesting they're conservatives. I am suggesting, though, they're aware that journalism has gone off the rails, if it ever was there at CBS News, and in order to get some kind of viewership and trust back, they've got to appear at least somewhat willing to scrutinize Democrats and not just blindly, in a partisan way, attack Donald Trump. And for this, guys like partisans like Scott Pelley or Leslie Stahl and all those old fossils from 60 Minutes, they've been furious. They're quitting and walking off and giving interviews about how disappointed they are. Well, it's because the game is up. So anyway, here's the haughty Scott Pelley giving his first interview since he was fired from CBS News for attacking his new boss for not being anti-Trump enough. Let's listen to some of this, just so you understand who these people are. They're telling us who they are in real time, and it's instructive.
Do you think Bari Weiss needs to be removed?
Oh, gosh, yes. Look, she's a lovely person. And her free press organization that she founded has been very successful. She's proven that. Great for her. But television's not her thing. She brings an ideology into CBS News where that is just anathema. And so it's a terrible fit. It's probably not her fault, but it's just a terrible fit. She doesn't know television. She doesn't understand how it works. She doesn't have management experience for a large organization like CBS News. So yes, I do think that we would be far better off without her. Maybe she goes back to the free press and has a sterling career. But this is like somebody walking up to me and saying, there's a 747. There are 400 people on it. We need you to fly it to Paris. I'm going to decline because I don't have a clue. And it would have been so much better if Bari Weiss had been offered this job and said, oh, that's not for me. I don't know how to do that.
What an arrogant putz. Just an arrogant putz. You know, look, I grant you that there are certain things about broadcasting. There are certain things that, skills you acquire over years. Having done this myself for, 30 years plus now, you pick up some things along the way. It's true. There's some things about the business to learn. That's true. But do you understand, to most people, how completely ridiculous and arrogant it sounds? Some stuffed shirt, blow-dried anchor guy says that his work on television is too sophisticated for the likes of this Bari Weiss. She's a lovely person, and I'm sure she's fine with her little journalist thing that went really well for her. But this is television. This is television. No one's impressed with you, Scott. People are watching guys in their basement wearing headsets, and they're getting 10 times the viewership you were getting on 60 Minutes. You don't hear them saying, this is YouTube. You don't understand. That's the problem, you puffed up jackass. No one needs to understand the sophistication that you supposedly bring because no one needs it anymore. You're a fossil. I don't know what is that like say? That's like, no one understands the sophistication of what it takes to guide a stagecoach with a team of horses. Not just anybody can hop into a stagecoach, take the reins, and steer a team of horses in a stagecoach. And rightly, everyone would go, well, true, I've never guided a team of horses in a stagecoach, but I could also just get in the car, Scott. Anyway, here's a little more of the haughty, puffed up, bottom-jawed Scott Pelley. Now out of a job, by the way, so I guess all he's got left to do is go on the media tour circuit and complain, which is really attractive. Here we go.
My hope is that the leadership of Paramount will say to themselves, okay, this isn't working. We have broadcasts that almost don't get on the air. We have respected journalists saying that there is a thumb on the scale for one political party over another. We have a broadcast which is among the most important in America, the most successful in the history of all of television. It was doing great. So why are we making these changes? We need adult supervision. And at the moment, we don't have it. We have people who've been installed in these jobs who, through no fault of their own, have no experience in television. It's not their fault. but they don't know what they're doing. And there's a subtle political bias that I've never seen at 60 Minutes before. And so, or at CBS News before. And so that is my hope, a return to sanity, a return to honor, a return to courage. We used to have all of those things in abundance.
Yes.
And now we don't.
Honor, courage.
We can save this.
Yes.
It's possible to land this plane.
Yes.
But right now,
Jaws coming out.
CBS News, in my view, is on fire.
Oh, my. It's a very dramatic. CBS News is on fire. What a pompous jackass. I got to tell you something, folks. My blood pressure rises just watching this jackass. What a pompous, puffed up windbag. Have you ever heard such dreck in your life? And he believes it. Respected journalists are complaining that there is a thumb on the scale. There is a bias that we have never seen before. Oh, is that a fact, Scott? Because we've seen the bias for decades. We've watched that crap show, tick, 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 after football. We've seen the bias. Never seen it before. It's because it was your bias. And so when you're not allowed to regularly deploy your bias, that then to you is a thumb on the scale. Whereas actual journalists say, hey, I don't know that you're looking at that objectively and fairly. You can't just say that without looking at the other side of it. And they say, that's thumb on the scale. Well, no, it's actually taking your thumb off the scale and looking at it objectively. But it tells you everything you need to know about these people when he says, this is the most important news program that's ever existed in the history of the world. And they don't know what they're doing. It's on fire. No one cares more about this institution than I. And it is the most important in the world. If you walked down the street today and asked 10 people, what is the most important, and use that word, what is the most important media outlet in the country? Do you think a one of them, serious question now, do you think a one of them would say, in fact, try this at a barbecue, kind of a lame parlor trick, but try it. Go to your family gathering or your next barbecue and just ask 5 people, what's the most important news program out there? What's the most important source for news out there today? You know what you're going to get? Probably 5 to 10 different answers. And I guarantee you none of them are going to say, 60 Minutes? I never miss 60 Minutes. Aaron, when was the last time you watched Tick, 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 Tick? When did you ever watch it? You're younger than me. Did you ever watch that show?
No, but I watch football.
You do, and so you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Coming up after this game wraps up, tick, 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 Leslie Stahl sits down and grills President Trump. That's the only time you've ever heard of 60 Minutes, isn't it? Football?
Mm-hmm.
It's the most important news program ever in the history of all news programs. No one cares. All right, a little more. And this, again, this just proves the reason I play this for you is because it's instructive as to who these jackasses are, what they think of themselves, the game they've been playing, and why they're so angry. They don't think anybody is more important than them. Nobody can do what they do, and they're heroes. They tell themselves they're actual heroes on par with. Aaron has also served in the United States military, so let's just see if he's impressed by wartime correspondent Scott Pelley here. Here we go.
Stupid, I can I can take that. Stiff, yeah, probably. Don't care about the country. I've never worn the uniform, but I've been in combat for this country in Afghanistan and Iraq, Kuwait, been shot at, spent nights in foxholes filling up with water in the desert. I'm not aware that the President of the United States has ever done any of those things for his country? Please correct me if I'm wrong. You become a journalist because you love the First Amendment. You become a journalist because you love the country. And while all the other descriptions that the president used about me might be applicable, not that one. There is no democracy without journalism. It can't be done. And that is why I am a journalist.
I'm sorry. I don't mean to subject you to this, but it's important you see it. So, Aaron, as a guy who enlisted, you've served the country. I don't know that you've seen combat. I
have not.
But you probably know people that have, I assume.
Yeah.
So, does Scott Pelley impress you there?
No, he kind of reminds me of like when you are at those barbecues or functions and someone finds out that you were in the military and they want to like bond with you and tell you about how they almost joined and why they couldn't at that time. You know,
and to be clear, I've never served. I've certainly never seen any combat at all. But I do wonder, like when he tells the story of I've been in foxholes, like guys that have been shot at. I wonder, do they think that guy's impressive? Serious question.
No.
Do they put it on par at all?
No. Also, foxholes in the desert don't really fill with water, do they? Like just the desert itself, doesn't it like not have water?
Well, that's a great point. Maybe a journalist ought to interview Scott Pelley and ask that. You'll remember that Brian Williams famously years ago got himself out of a job. He got kicked off the NBC nightly news and got banished to what was then MSNBC, the former anchor, because he lied. He just flatly lied on Letterman, telling this story about how he was shot at while flying into, I think it was Iraq, to cover it or something. And it was a totally made up story. The guy that flew Brian Williams into Iraq said that never happened. And he had to confess that my memory was a little shoddy. These guys tell themselves they are really something special. And that's what's so amazing. D-Day was this weekend. And, I'll play this because I'm not really sure where else I would, but it's a great reminder because you want to talk about heroes. How about underage kids who lied just so they could serve to be a part of World War II? You know the number of people we lost, teenagers, 16, 17, 18 years of age, storming the beaches of Normandy to save the world from a Nazi march across Europe. What they did in Normandy, I'll tell you something, D-Day, if you ever get the chance, go to Normandy. I'd like to ask Scott if he's ever gone. I'm sure he probably has, since he's been so many places as an important journalist. Go to Pointe de Houx and look at those cliffs and think of those Army Rangers scaling those cliffs or those young boys jumping off those boats into shallow water, storming up the beach while Nazis are standing on the cliff shooting at them. It's like a turkey shoot. It was an unbelievable feat of bravery. You can read about, you can hear about, and still not fully appreciate until you go to Normandy and actually see the physical scene where the bodies of these heroes are buried, and you see the actual cliffs, and you really start to consider what the balls, quite frankly, on these men it took to pull off D-Day. That's heroism. Not what Scott Pelley does, whatever the hell it is he thinks he did. But anyway, here's Pete Hegseth on D-Day in Normandy. I just thought this appropriate since we just commemorated that over the weekend here. 82nd anniversary, I believe. 87th? I got to check my math. Anyway, here's Pete Hegseth.
America will lead, and we must. But capable allies must be right there with us, shoulder to shoulder, in the breach, when it matters. In the years since these beaches, much of the West, in some places, in some quarters, and in some capitals, grew comfortable, we forgot that freedom is not free. We forgot that peace is not wished into being. It is bought with purpose, with honor, and with strength. The men who landed on these beaches knew this. The question we ask ourselves is, do we? It's past time we remember what they knew. Their legacy demands far more than quiet reflection. It requires our active vigilance. Sadly, today, different European beaches are stormed by different dangerous ideologies. Beaches in Spain, in Italy, in Greece, and Bulgaria. Boats and men arrive. When will European capitals do something about that invasion? Or is it too late? I pray not, and I believe not. The men who fought and died here restored freedom to Europe. That freedom must be maintained by this generation of leaders and warfighters, or what they fought for was merely temporary. As our great President Ronald Reagan once said, freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. You don't pass it to the next generation in the bloodstream. It must be defended by each and every generation. We stand by our allies, and we expect our allies capable and ready to stand alongside us. The heroes of 1944 did that, and may we.
Beautifully said from Secretary of War Pete Hegseth on the 82nd, I was right the first time, 82nd anniversary of D-Day. That's real heroism. Scott Pelley ain't even close, but boy, he tells himself he is. That is a guy who thinks of himself as special. I mean, when you bring yourself to tears thinking about your own heroism, he's a bore. It's anyway. One more, and then I will move off of this. Bill Maher was talking with the Democrat hack Senator Chris Murphy about 60 Minutes, because this propaganda arm, again, tick, 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 tick after football. Football's the most watched thing still in the country. And so tick, tick, tick was the one bit of propaganda that they still kind of had a foothold on. And CBS effectively blew that up. Paramount and CBS and their big merger here recently, they put Bari Weiss in. So this, for them, football was the entree into their propaganda arm. It was really sort of the last vestige of it. That's what Pelley and all these people are so upset about. So is Murphy with Bill Maher here. Take a listen to this. Bill Maher absolutely torching him on this front.
It's a big charge that you just made. That 60 Minutes itself and CBS itself is now completely MAGA. I don't see it that way.
Completely MAGA.
Well, that's kind of what you said.
But he is clearly intent
yes.
on installing people who will tell his story.
Oh, of course.
And will keep his critics off the air.
But let me ask you this question. I watch 60 Minutes every week. I've had since I was a kid. If I didn't hear all the buzz in the media, if I didn't read about it all the time, would I ever notice that it was any different? I don't think I would.
Yeah, it's not just 60 Minutes, and part of it is you don't know what they choose not to. You don't know what they choose not to air.
That's true too.
Part of what the allegation is that they are killing stories that would be embarrassing for the president. So it's hard to know what you're missing in a censorship environment.
But I've seen ones that are not very favorable to the president.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. I don't know if I would have noticed any different if I hadn't been reading about it. Also, I just don't think being a 60 Minutes correspondent is that hard. I don't feel like Scott Pelley was a national treasure. Companies change hands all the time. I never liked them. Sorry, I just never did.
There you go. Thank you. Bill Maher and I don't agree on much, but look at that. You see, somebody can become such a pompous windbag and jackass that it actually brings Americans together. Thank you, Scott Pelley. We owe you a debt of gratitude. Scott Pelley has managed to bring me, Chris Stigall from Heartlander News, a conservative from America's Heartland, together with a left coast, left-wing, Los Angeles atheist. He and I agree. Scott Pelley's value is whoosh. Now, in Scott Pelley's mind, he's the most valuable human being ever doing the most important work ever. And that takedown was epic. And I'm so glad it came from him, not just me. That makes me feel better. That's going to start my week off well.